Hello. Cathar Love number 52, number 53. Montsegur Massacre anniversary. Yes, the anniversary of the Massacre of Montsegur. Not many people would realise, I'm sure a few do, but it's 770 years to the day since the time that over 200 Cathar bonhommes, perfectae, parfaits, the religious Cathar religious clergy, and about 20 others who were mainly soldiers, men at arms, and their wives or girlfriends, who decided that although they could have left the mountain of Montsegur with the other knights and mercenaries, they decided to stay on and be burnt with their Cathar friends. This happened on the 16th of March 1244. They'd just spent a siege of some 10 months on the top of the Pog of the mountain of Montsegur. But they were completely surrounded by the northern knights, people from the north, who came down during the Albigensian Crusade, which was originally a religious crusade against, actually at that time, fellow Christians, the Cathars, and the only crusade on European soil, again, Christian against Christian. But it just became a land grab by the northern knights and lords, and eventually the whole area of Languedoc was swallowed up after the end of the Cathars, the Cathar uprising, and the lords and the aristocracy who supported the Cathars. When they were annihilated, the Cathars had no support, and they were virtually the knights and nobles of Languedoc who supported the Cathars were wiped out at the Battle of Muret, where King Peter of Aragon, King Pedro, came over with his knights. Unfortunately, King Pedro was killed, and the whole thing was a rout, and so militarily speaking, that was the end of the Cathars. So a lot of the remaining Cathars and their hierarchy, I suppose, ascended onto the Pog, the top of the Montsegur, and they sought refuge there. The northern knights and the church, laid siege to the area for some 10 months. That completely surrounded the Cathars. The Cathars in that time managed to, with Matthias and Pierre Bonnet, I say Matthias with a smile, for personal reasons, descended the Portil on 2 occasions, taking down the Cathar treasure, sacred things, and taking away for safekeeping. Pierre Bonnet kept moving. Whatever they took down, there was certainly money, treasure. There was a grail, a cup, and they have yet to be discovered. This is the treasure of Montsegur, and many have looked, including Himmler, who sent Scarface Corsini, the Nazi or the German commando, very famous soldier. He went down there looking for the treasure of Montsegur, and he found something, but it wasn't the treasure. So during that 10 months, or in the latter stages of the 10 months, on those 2 trips, the treasure was taken away. Matthias reascended the mountain twice on ropes, and he brought back on the first occasion some mercenaries, and the second occasion he had a troop of mercenaries under the leadership of a guy called Cabario, and they were well versed in the arts of war, and they would have made a difference. But unfortunately by that time Montsegur was totally cut off, surrounded, and he couldn't get these people through. He got through himself though, Matthias, and climbed back up, and he stayed with the rest, and on the last 2 weeks before they capitulated, or after they capitulated, they asked for 2 weeks, 2 weeks respite in the truce before they were led off the mountain, because they knew they were going to be burnt as heretics, and they gave them that 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, there were many things to be done. Certainly those soldiers and their wives and girlfriends had to be prepared for how they could withstand the flames of being burnt. The Cathar clergy themselves, especially the older ones, through years had been trying to create the more mystical and spiritual aspect of their lives, and over it is said by the Catholic chroniclers of the time that often the Cathars didn't appear to be feeling any pain whatsoever, and often they did not call out or scream or cry at all. That's fine, but people still had to go through the process and understand, and because it is a rather violent ending to one's life to be burnt. During that time, I don't know how many, but certainly many of the Cathars made a pact that they would return, because they knew they had other lives. And although one of the ideas of becoming a Cathar perfecti or pathe is to be able to return to the world, to return one's divine spark to the source, and get off this wheel of reincarnations, and yet there were Cathars who said they don't want to get off the wheel of incarnation. They want to keep on reincarnating until virtually the entire world will once again return to the source. Other Cathars wanted to return because they wanted to see a revival of that which was Catharism. And it's not a bad ambition to want to see universal and unconditional love for everybody, which was the whole basis of the Cathar faith, or certainly one of their main pillars of their faith. So this all happened within that last 2 weeks, and then they were led down from Montsegur barefoot. It was a cold morning, and when they reached the base of Montsegur, already there was a huge palisade, logs made ready for them with stakes inside, and where they were tied to in ones and twos to these various posts, these uprights. And then with the assembled crowd and lots of Te Deums, Deus Vult, God wills it, God wills it, it was set alight. I'm showing a sketch here to give some idea, rather than words, of what it was like It's a little compilation of mine, but just to give some idea. Now, there's over 200 souls that were burnt that day, but this wasn't. In Bamong, I think Minerve, certainly there were over 400 burnt together at the one time. At the beginning of the Albigensian Crusade, there were thousands in the Church of Mary Magdalene, Cathars and Catholics, and they were all burnt. God sought out the Cathars from the Catholics, as one monk was supposed to have said. Many times there was over 100 sealed in a cave, and there's innumerable acts where 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 were burnt. To diverge for 1 second, one story, and it's nothing out of the ordinary in itself, but it gives an insight into the mind of the monks, the Catholic monks, who organised these auto-da-fés, organised these burning of the heretics. And there was this little old lady, and she requested that Perfecti Bonhomme attend to her as she was dying, and she wasn't quite her whole self as she was dying. And a monk heard about this, and he went up, and he said, yes, he's pretended to be a Cathar Perfecti, and he heard the consolamentum, but once he realised, and she confessed that she was not confessed because she didn't realise he wasn't the monk, he wasn't a Cathar, so she just spoke. And once it was ascertained that she was definitely a Cathar, they took the little old lady out to a field and burnt her to death, and with lots of rejoicing and Te Deums, Deus Vult, they all returned to the monastery and enjoyed a hearty breakfast, considering the fact that they'd done a good job. Now, there are different times, and there are certainly barbarous times, but right throughout history, people know that when you harm another, when you pain another, what it's about. It's an automatic, it's a self-evident fact that to harm another, to hurt another, to cause pain to another can't be good. You wouldn't want it done to yourself, and you certainly wouldn't consider it good or beneficial if it was done to yourself. So therefore, I don't see how anybody can see how it is beneficial, how it is good, or even how it's God's work that you're doing it to another human being. And there were plenty of people who stood up against this. So, back to Montsegur. The 200 were tied to the stake, they lit the fire, and the flames lit up. Now I know, I won't go into how I know, but there was a woman there, and she was being burnt, she is here in this life. She's been reincarnated. And her 2 children, I think they're obviously screaming out for her, so they threw the children over the palisade into the fire, and the 2 children were burnt with the rest of them. So why is Montsegur such an important thing in the Cathar calendar? Because there were larger groups burnt, but what it did do, it signaled the end, it tore the heart out of Catharism in the south of France, in the Languedoc area. After that, there were just small pockets scattered around in the Pyrenees, the north of Italy, even as far as Egypt. But they were all slowly hunted down by the church or the armies at the time. And until eventually there was only one left, and in 1344, Guillaume Bilibast, he was caught by the Inquisition, and he was burned at the stake at the south of France, and he was the last one. But before he went, he predicted that in 700 years the laurel will again go green. Catharism will return. So we're in that period now, 770 years actually since the Cathars were burnt at Montsegur, and in another, I don't know what it is, 5 or 6 years, it'll be 700 years since he was burnt. But all over the world at this time, here in Sydney, I know half a dozen people who are Cathars who were burnt at that time, and there are other Cathars who weren't at Montsegur but were in other places and didn't necessarily burn, but are returning. There's people all over the world, and they have this, rather than mental, they can feel it in their gut that they are the Cathars or ex-Cathars, because the Cathar message is so strong. So Montsegur as a mountain is symbolic, and the 700 years is so important, and one can see why. Why 700 years? Well, maybe the Cathars were far-sighted, but this is the age of information. This is the age of internet. This is the age of sharing. This is the age where you, I, anybody, if you feel about something, you feel strongly about something, you can put that out to the universe. And if others feel the same way, they too can respond. These are amazing times. With Amazon, I put out books through Amazon, 6 books now. Some are on Catharism. I'll go into that later because I'm editing them anyway. But people who would never have a chance to write, to get their story out or their interest out, now have the chance to do it. They can do it looking out, as I am at the moment. They can put pen to paper, they can get a book, and they can put it on Amazon. Now, maybe thousands will read it, and maybe 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is the age that you can do it. So, this 700 years is now. And at Montsegur, these people knew that this space of 700 years is what they were planning for, and it is happening now. Now, some will say ludicrous, some will go wow, and some will say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's me putting out this message, and it will go to those to whom it's meant to go to. Once again, bye for now.